So for the first couple days, we were taking care of some logistics and some housekeeping and a couple days for foundational principles. But today we get into the content. Now this might shock you, but the beginning of our content is Chapter 1, Section 1. Crazy, isn't it? Now the topic is the world before 1492, which is a pretty daunting topic. And I am not going to adequately get across to you what happened before 1492 in the course of one class. That will require an actual world history class, which is mandatory to graduate. So for our purposes, I'm going to hit you up with 3 scales of how the Americas became part of the human story. I'm going to start way back and then kind of mid-range and then fairly close to now on a historical level. So the big picture is what all of us are. Homo sapiens, okay? Now, we had some hominid ancestors that preceded us, Homo erectus, all the way down to Australopithecus, but all Homo sapiens, and it's been substantiated with mitochondrial DNA, began about, estimates between 180 to 130,000 years ago on the plains of East Africa, and slowly human beings migrated all over the world. And this group of Homo sapiens went into Europe, and there was a group called Neanderthal, and Neanderthal got replaced, and then people got into the Indian subcontinent and into Australia and into China. Now here is the American story. People were following herds of animals. Now this was not ice bridge, the Bering Ice Bridge. It was the Bering Land Bridge, and they followed the herds of animals across the Bering Straits here, in through Alaska, all the way through Canada, the United States, Mexico, Latin America, and into South America. And this started, once we filled up the world, we stopped being hunting and gathering people, we moved to agrarian, and then we became what is considered civilization about 5,000 years ago. None of that will be on your AP test, and that's the big picture. Now, if I do something a little more mid-range, before I get into this, why Homo sapiens defeated Neanderthal, on a very simple level, it was tools and teamwork. Where Neanderthals, evidence points they were not working together. Understanding Homo sapiens is the wise man. So between teamwork and tools, in this case the atlatl that could propel a spear much stronger than doing it the old-fashioned way, these are the reasons why Homo sapiens eliminates Neanderthal. However, I shouldn't say that, because a lot of people have Neanderthal within their genetics. Personally, I've been tested. I am 2.6% Neanderthal, which is actually quite normal. It's kind of mid-range. So I guess Neanderthal is still with a lot of us on a genetic level. So anyway, and that's me throwing an atlatl. It is so much fun. It is very cool. I hope you get a chance to do that. So I was getting in touch with my roots, my deep Homo sapien roots. Okay, so that's the big range. Now, more mid-range are the 4 world zones. Now, this purple is called Afro-Eurasia, Africa, Europe, Asia. This is where most of the action happened. They had all of the advantages in terms of where civilization began, in terms of Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, and along the Yellow River in China, and along the Indus River. This is where civilization began. This is where the Silk Road was. In terms of a world history class, the first semester is pretty much taking place in Afro-Eurasia. Now, Australasia, people did go to Australasia a little bit later to the show, and they were not nearly at the scale of Afro-Eurasia. Now, the Pacific is a third of the world's geography, but 1% of the population. And then the 4th zone is the American zone. Okay, this is the final zone to be colonized by Homo sapiens. Okay, now something a little more recent. Before Columbus, there was tremendous diversity in the Americas. Now, in Canada, the indigenous people are called First Nations. Now, in America, American Indians, Native Americans, and you can see, I'm not going to get into the details here, just a tremendous amount of diversity in terms of them. Now, when you get down to Mexico, we had the Maya, okay, which were in Central America here, and then we had the Aztecs in modern-day Mexico, and then we had the Inca people of South America. So, before Columbus arrived, let me make it real simple for you. A lot of diverse groups of people, and there were a lot of them, okay? So that's our starting point. That's our story on 3 different scales. Now, in class, I asked you the biggest historical turning points of the last 1,000 years. It was very cool to hear your answer. Now, this is my opinion, okay? And this is not etched in stone, but my number one turning point was the arrival of Columbus in 1492. I'm not saying he discovered anything. People were there, but when he arrived, the 4 world zones became a global world. That is an enormous turning point. Then Gutenberg's printing press to disseminate information inexpensively and quickly, the atomic bomb, the atomic age, the first vaccination shot, Edward Jenner. That's why a lot of us are still alive, and the creation of the internal combustion engine and the rise of the Industrial Revolution. This is all world history stuff. Well, 2 through 5 is all world history stuff. Now, you do need to know number 1. However, one that I could have put in there is number 6, okay, which is the bubonic plague or the Black Death. Now, this disease killed about a third of all the people along the Silk Road, in particular Europe, in a very short period of time. In 6 years, a third of the people died, which sounds, oh my goodness, that's really horrible. But think about it. The 2/3 of the people who did survive it had very strong immune systems. So when these people go to the Americas, they have an advantage on an immunization level, on a they're less prone to get sick. Their immune systems were stronger. And just real briefly, we had rats, and then the flea drank the infected rat's blood, and then bacteria got into the rat's gut, the flea into the flea's gut. The flea would jump on the person, and they would die very, very quickly. So again, it killed a third of the people, but the 2/3 that survived had very strong immune systems when they arrived into the Americas. Now, once these people arrived, you can see the absolute calamity it caused for indigenous people. Historians call it the Great Dying, which is a little bit of truth in advertising, but you can look, when Columbus arrived, about 22 million, and then a short time later, about 1 million. That is death on a scale that's hard to comprehend. And that's what happened, okay? So it's a very unfortunate story for the indigenous people, but it's the reality. It's what happened in history. Now, that's a very brief overview. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do once we go through class is I'm going to ask you to read pages 2 through 9 and answer this question, okay? And we're going to do this, I know it's our first class of content, but at the end of every section, there will be a question that we will answer. And the reason why I want you to get into the habit is that this wording is very similar to what you will see on the AP exam in the springtime. So my rationale is if we become accustomed to the vernacular and the wording and how to write it, and we do it with repetition, it won't be big and scary come spring. If we don't do it, it's probably going to be big and scary come spring. But if you can discipline yourself and do this every time and do it to the best of your ability, you're going to get a 3, 4, or 5 on your AP exams. So that is a lot of information what happened before 1492, but hopefully you have a broad schematic to what happened. And again, on our first day, get into the habit to do your best effort, be disciplined. It will pay off in the spring. So thank you for watching.